think we are all here and ready to go for the policy roundup. And we are going to see if we can do this in a little bit of a rapid fire way. And it's really just building out of all the conversations you all have been having over the last several weeks of what is the difference that we can be making now. We know we had the CARES funding is coming through, and folks are figuring out how to tap into that, but there are so many that have been in these policy and advocacy conversations, and also just really hearing from folks on the ground about what's needed, that we wanted to have a conversation around solutions and things that folks can connect into and help to make happen. What we're going to do is we have 10 folks that are lined up that to be able to give snapshots of what they've been working on and ways that you can connect. You're also going to be seeing in the chat box a little bit a link to a document where you can also add your ideas and reflections and ways to take action and connect. And once we go through that round robin, Hal is going to be kind of wrapping up for us in terms of just the work that he's been doing, connecting around all of these issues and why they're so important during this time. So you're going to start seeing a lot of names coming up on the screen, but we really are trying to say, you'll hear everything from the digital divide conversation to what do we do with summer to what about the most vulnerable youth. So what we're going to start with is there's a few folks teed up to talk about what are we hearing from young people? How are we paying attention to older youth? Are we doing enough in older youth and vulnerable youth during this time? And I'm going to turn now, if we're all here, team, for our Brady Bunch moment, I'm going to turn to Karen Evans, who's Executive Director of the New Orleans Children Youth Planning Board, who's been working with young leaders to get a youth master plan process up and going, but you've been talking with those young leaders about current reality and what differences, what they're seeing as they look at the months ahead and what next. So Karen, if we can bring you on screen, we're sharing videos now.
Okay, there we go.
There we go, Karen.
Good morning all, greetings to you all. I am happy to greet you from New Orleans. We're still here. Yes, we're an epicenter and we're still here. I will say to you that the young people that we've had an opportunity to meet with last week and continuing to meet with this week have shared their feelings of stress and anxiety around a couple of different things. One is they feel incredibly disconnected from what they saw as their social network, that not having a connection to their core group of folks who matter to them, it has really been very disconcerting to them. And the other is this anxiousness about what is coming. So summer has often been, in New Orleans particularly, has often been a space where summer employment mattered to our young people. We are a city that has 53% of ALICE households of working poor. Our childhood poverty rate is 39%. Summer has been a place where young people could contribute and participate and often curtail some of their school fees for the coming year. Absent that, given our high tourism and hospitality impact to COVID-19, the city has no idea what the full impact of that is going to be, and our young people are stressed and anxious about that. We see the summer as a tool building, skill building time. It has been around other learning spaces. And if there is this effort to recapture learning or to cause there to be redos where necessary because of the absence of a full school year, then our young people are concerned that they may too not only have a loss of revenue generation for their families and households, given what they've done in the past, but they may also feel very encumbered by the need to catch up on things that are not there, that are affected by things that had no responsibility for them themselves. So we struggle with this stress, tension, fear, and hopefulness that they could in fact have something fresh and new on horizon, but nobody's including them in the conversation. So that is where they're speaking to us now.
And I know part of what Karen's and the team there is doing is actually training some young leaders to actually go out and in a virtual way, listen to young leaders and young people throughout the community over the next couple of months and actually be able to shape kind of agenda for what next, responding now and what next. Thank you, Karen. I'm going to turn over to Caitlin Johnson with Spark Action. And in that, like, what are young people doing now? The young activists that you work with who have moved into a virtual space rather than kind of gathering together, what are you hearing from them?
Thank you, Merita, and thanks, Karen. Hello all from another epicenter. I'm in Brooklyn with Spark Action, the Forum Storytelling and Mobilizing Collective, and we're still here too. And I'll just quickly go through, because a lot of it echoes what Karen just said, but a lot of the young leaders we work with across the country are focused on a lot of different issues, focused on climate change, on justice reform, on access to opportunity, on civic and voter engagement. And we're hearing a lot of the same things. There's a lot of exhaustion. Folks are exhausted, folks are overwhelmed. They're trying to adapt while they're taking care of themselves and their families and their communities. There's a lot of need and question around mental health supports. A lot of questions about the stimulus, who's eligible and what does that mean? And then, as Karen said, what is this going to mean for young people's futures, young people who are not in school, young people who missed graduation or other milestones? And particularly for young people who were especially vulnerable before all of this, opportunity youth, young people involved in the justice system, parenting young people or young people supporting families. What does this mean? What happens now and what happens next? On the positive side, we are hearing so much an incredible spirit of adaptation and experimentation. I think as adults, we often think that young people live their whole lives digitally, but in fact, youth organizers and young leaders whom we support, the bulk of the work has to be done on the ground, developing real relationships, educating and engaging people. And true to the theme of this, it's all about relationships. So this is upending a lot of that work in very real ways. And even the most tech-forward organizers are having to get creative. And a lot of the rallies and events they had planned, particularly civic engagement summits, young people were planning over the spring and summer, all of that's interrupted. A couple of quick examples of how folks are dealing and getting fully digital is really creative experimental ways to share content and share perspective. The Climate Strike Coalition is pivoted to digital, a 3-day digital live stream with experts and influencers and artists and young people starting on Earth Day. There's a lot of creative engagement around the census, get out the vote and voter engagement town halls and summits that are starting. And then the last thing I'll flag, since this is over a minute, but is that just to echo what Kent said earlier, we're really living in an unprecedented moment of crisis and opportunity. And a lot of the conversation we're hearing from young leaders is as they're working together to create trainings and share peer-to-peer knowledge and ideas, they're also thinking about the longer term. What does this mean about our systems, our institutions? This is, in the words of one young organizer, this isn't just a health crisis, this is really pulling back the curtains on bigger social and economic issues and the crisis of capitalism. We're hearing a really positive note that there is a sense that the government has a role to play, and if it were more effective and people-driven, it would be helping out a lot more in this case. So we're optimistic for the future. And I'll share in the chat some of the resources we're here.
That's great.
Thanks.
Sorry, Kate. Share in the chat. And also, I'm going to remind folks, there is a Google Doc where you can go to and add your own resources, but also see many of the things that folks are referencing. So you can tap into that. And that's also where you see the link that Joanne Pagno from National Network for Youth, who used to be with the Forum team, has the links to a recent conversation that you all had around homeless and runaway youth. Can you give us a top note from that and how people can take some action in that area?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Merita and Karen, for this opportunity. Again, hi, everyone. My name is Joanne Pagno. I'm the Director of Policy and Advocacy at the National Network for Youth. We're a membership-driven policy advocacy and public education organization working with local service providers, agencies, and young leaders with lived experiences of homelessness. In regards to some of the conversations that our network has had with federal agencies with regard to a call that took place last month, in which the National Network for Youth brought together local service providers, the U.S. Interagency Council on Youth Homelessness, the CDC, as well as the Department of Health and Human Services. We really tried to uplift the needs that our local providers and our young leaders have been highlighting in their experiences related to COVID-19. So much of what we have been hearing has been related to shelter needs, access to food, housing, mental health and medical care, and even some of the most basic needs that you can think of relating to access to food. We've heard of an instance where a young parent needed assistance with just getting some support and formula for her young child. And so really trying to understand how COVID-19 has really impacted youth who have lived experiences of homelessness and who are also returning clients is something that we have been shifting our attention, energy, and time into. And some areas that we've been focusing on really has been gathering, developing, and circulating resources in real time. A lot of, as Kate had just mentioned earlier, you know, there have been a lot of questions and challenges regarding the economic impact payments through the IRS and through the Department of Treasury, and even with the payment protection plan for nonprofit organizations through the SBA 7A loan program. And so just making sure that folks are sharing and learning from each other is something that we have been focusing our efforts on. And we also encourage folks to share from your communities how you've possibly been implementing and interpreting some of the federal guidelines at the state and local levels. At the National Network for Youth, we've been hosting weekly office hours with our providers just to make sure that they can learn from each other and to also see how local policies are also being implemented.
Thank you. Thank you, Joanne. Our next trio is going to talk about what solutions youth programs, youth organizations are focused on. And first, Dan Gilbert with the National After School Alliance. Dan, over to Gina with the National After School Association, and then Gina Warner, and then Jeff Davis with the California After School Network. 1, 2, 3. You guys can do it.
Hi, everyone. So excited to be here. Dan Gilbert with the After School Alliance. So I'm going to try to go quickly through some of this. I'm going to change a little bit of what I was going to say because I think that Jennifer Peck did a fantastic job of describing kind of the conundrum that we're facing structurally in terms of how summer programs are going to be situated to address this, whether that's just for a couple weeks at the end of the summer, whether or not we might lose the entire kind of in-person summer learning program situation. But I think the concern that we have at the Alliance and that we're trying to strategize around is concern that kind of what we traditionally refer to as summer learning loss isn't just going to be confined to summer anymore with kids out of school for so long. And even with some states discussing potentially not bringing kids back into schools by the beginning of the next school year. And so what we're looking at is strategizing around ways that after school and summer learning programs can prospectively build off of their strengths in a situation because of all of the compounded trauma, because of all of the deep need that there will be for social and emotional skill development amongst youth who are right now going through social distancing and things like that. And so what we at the Alliance are strategically trying to do is make sure, number one, that we make sure that the federal government provides as many resources as possible and streamlines the provision of those resources to programs that need them, both to increase and improve the services that they provide, but also just to stay open. And also to make sure that all of the programs that are doing that on the ground around the country have the information that they need in order to access the resources that are going to be made available for this, and also to build their relationships with schools and districts that are going to be kind of the conduit through which a lot of those resources flow. So sorry, I probably went over a minute, but I tried to be quick.
We're good. Over to Gina.
Hi, everyone. So this is Gina Warner with the National After School Association, and I'm just here today to remind everyone that the after school workforce is the workforce for the workforce. And right now, the after school workforce is the essential workforce for the essential workers. And that we need to remember full support for their time, training, and safety is key to providing all of these resources we're talking about for young people. None of the ideas we're discussing today for kids or for families are going to be possible if we don't have a workforce to support that. And lest anyone think I may be alarmist here, those of you who know me know that I led the after school intermediary immediately after Katrina, and I can tell you that we will be looking at a workforce crisis when our communities open back up. We will be competing against retail establishments, fast food restaurants, Amazon, which didn't exist 15 years ago. And so we need to be prepared and understand that we need to make provisions. All the policy initiatives we're talking about, all the private initiatives, we need to make sure that we are securing funding for the workforce so they are there to be able to deliver services. So yes, this is a crisis, and our workforce is in the front lines of this crisis right now, every day putting their health and their safety at risk to deliver services for children and families. But as so many have said, this is also a moment of opportunity. I'm going to add, I think it's also a moment of obligation for us as leaders in the field to advocate for the fair pay, fair benefits, equitable access to training and opportunities that we talk about for our young people. We need that for the adults in the workforce too. We need them. and I mean we, not just on this call, but we the people, the big we, if we're going to be able to put our communities back together, provide support to families, and have the full economic recovery that I know that so many of those that we are working with are concerned about. Thank you.
Jeff, anything else on the youth programs? And then over to Nick Yoder and Jen DePaoli as they're talking to educators.
Yes, and throwing some information into the chat box, but the systems that have been designed are resulting in the outcomes that they're resulting in, and this current context is only going to seek to magnify and reinforce many of these pieces, right? So, but this also has created some opportunities for us to dream of something new, and the good news is that we don't have to reinvent it. We've talked about science-informed equitable supports for thriving youth today, right? And all of the recommendations in the SEED report, the Science of Learning and Development, would point to for us to create whole community collaboration to support thriving youth and families. So some of the things that we're doing, yes, we're working to address the current context, ensure that our programs, if they choose to, are equipped to provide emergency childcare services. We're advocating by creating GIS maps of our locations close to hospitals and police stations so that we can elevate our profile amongst other state leaders. So using the current opportunity to advocate, and also this is a moment of bureaucratic agitation. And we have a problem of silos in probably all of our communities in our country, right? So what we're working on in California is something, and we started this in December, is what's called the Collaboration for Whole Child Health and Wellness. So how can we build on our platform to enhance our nutrition, mental health, as well as medical, dental, vision, and other social service connection to our already existing infrastructure to create the conditions necessary for thriving youth. Lots of information in the chat box. Definitely hope you'll follow up with us.
Fantastic. Jen and Nick, powerful duo.
Yeah, hi, thanks Merita. And can I just say amen to what everybody has already been saying? At LPI, we've been thinking about this very similarly, and we've been thinking about kind of a three-stage response: the immediate response, which we've obviously been working on alongside all of you, looking at responses to distance learning, serving vulnerable student populations, especially including students with disabilities, the SEL, mental health, and trauma-informed practice, and then also disruptions to educator prep and those types of things. Next, we'll be moving more on to not only continuing that work, but then also thinking about the CARES Act and trying to help people think about how that money can be spent, in addition to the other stimulus funds that will be hopefully passed over the next few months. And then lastly, like has been said repeatedly over this call, I'm thinking about the re-engagement of students in the fall and how schools can be better prepared to meet these needs should distance learning be put into place again. And I'll let Nick, and I will just also say too, very much on Hal's point earlier today in terms of rethinking how the schools work and rethinking school design. I think that's very much where our focus is as well. With that, I'll pass it over to Nick, because we'll be working with them on some of the back to school re-engagement pieces.
Thanks, Jen. Hi, everybody. And I definitely echo everything that everyone's been saying. I'm just going to quickly point, there's a lot of stuff that CASEL is doing around CASEL Cares and COVID response. But I think one of the things, and you can go to our website for that, but I think one of the things I really want to hit on is just how we are contemplating and thinking about and talking with educators about how to reimagine schools right now, particularly when we're thinking about, accountability systems and testing has been canceled in many states this past year. Now, how is that going to then think through the next year? How are teacher evaluations and educator evaluations? How are we connecting more broadly with you all in the after school space and extended learning opportunities and summer learning, right? Like, how can we be more cohesive and connected to the whole child in the different avenues that we're situated? And really trying to think about, as Jen mentioned, how can we leverage some of that CASEL Care funds and money and policy mechanisms to really support and enhance that work, and then how that can get translated back down into districts and schools, and how can we really create that cohesive system is some of the stuff that we're really thinking about along with many of you and many of our partners.
Thank you, Nick.
Thanks.
Again, I encourage folks to go to the document where there's more resources. Mary Ellen Wiggins with the Children's Cabinet has posted what governors and businesses are doing to be able to help bridge the digital divide. Bethany with the Ed Council and Sold Alliance has resources that they've been putting out to folks around a range of policy issues and thinking long-term beyond the next year to 5 years. What does it mean as we're responding to the current economy and all of this? So more resources and a commercial, because what we're hoping to do is get some interest and conversation going here, and then we're planning to have a deeper dive into these topics and others in a couple of weeks. And so you'll be getting the invite to that webinar. I think you're seeing some of the need for the connection on this and thinking about a different way of doing business, as all of these both are targeted issues, but they all interconnect and relate. I'm going to turn over to Karen and Hal to give us our closing reflection. And thank you to this incredible round robin group of folks who are doing just such powerful work, but also amidst all that work to get this session together as well.
Great. Al, do you want the next or the last word?
Sure, thank you. I really appreciate this opportunity to gather together with everyone and learn so much about what folks are focused on. I think Ross put it well. The more we can have coherence, the more we have a sense of what it is we think are going to be necessary and can present that as a sector or a series of sectors, ideally, the better off we'll be. And I think if we're able to talk through the jagged kind of year we'll see this year and talk about flexibility, not just in getting additional funds, which is critically important, but talk about the ways in which we can engage young people in thinking about what additional flexibility might generate for us. But this has been a fantastic discussion, and we look forward to working with you both in these kinds of settings, in person when we're allowed to, and across the country in the Readiness Project. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Hal. Thank everybody. Thank our partners. This has been a huge amount of work harder than it thinks to get this many people on screen in a short amount of time. You know, when you go to the website, and we've just sort of launched the Readiness Projects on the website, you'll see that our goals are to make sure that we inform you, inspire you, get you involved so that we can all be implementing the kind of ideas, bold ideas that we've just talked about today. And I hope you can give us feedback on this format. We don't think you were bored. We may have over-informed you. We hope we inspired you. Clearly in the chat box, we have a lot of ways that we can get involved in each other's work. Part of what the forum tries to do is to align and get folks, create the forum for people to see how their work connects together. I hope we've demonstrated that. The other part of what we do is to really try to find important public ideas and figure out how to make them sticky and tangible and actionable. And you all have raised some powerful ones that we'll bring back in the next couple of weeks. One of the things I hope we can do as we talk about moving this forward to create a thriving youth field is to see if this does not sort of end up with, let's do a press release and say the readiness projects are open for business. Let's have an open letter that's a call to action. So we're going to come off of this call, take the chat, take the videos, have a conversation, get back to you soon with some opportunities to really galvanize the thinking that was on this call, which only scratched the surface of what you all are working on. When we pull back to look at the bigger picture of what young people need to thrive, what we need to do to really take a robust approach to equity, and how we need to make sure that the learning and development that we're focused on is not just for our benefit, but for young people's benefit so that they have a sense of confidence and agency and identity. We have a lot of work to do. We're going to be bolder, we're going to be clearer, we're going to be stronger than ever. Thank you for taking your time with us today.